until they know how to price appropriately with the home seller and set that right price from the beginning. That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to another episode of Zero BS Estate Agency. In this episode, I'm interviewing Bob McTague. Bob McTague is a seasoned real estate expert with a reputation for honesty and integrity. With over 2 decades of experience in the industry, Bob has become a trusted figure in the world of US real estate, specializing in helping home sellers achieve the best possible outcomes. He is known for his commitment to truth, transparency, and leveraging technology to maximize the value of his clients' homes. Bob's innovative pricing strategies and emphasis on professional marketing set him apart as a leader in the field. His dedication to ethical practices ensures a fair and positive experience for both buyers and sellers, making him a respected authority in the world of real estate in New York. So, Bob, what is the one thing that truly maximizes the value of someone's home when they go to sell?
Excellent question. To me, it comes down to 3 things, and that's number 1, the truth. The next is transparency, and the next thing is tech. And I'm going to go over those quickly with you, but it all starts with the truth. Telling the home seller the truth about the market, the truth about price, the truth about everything that goes into the initial stage of listing that seller's property. Transparency is about the process, giving the seller options to choose, giving them 3 different options. With me, it's smart profit, it's smart sale, and it's, we have a whole system that we give the seller 3 choices to maximize their profit. The last is tech, and tech really means marketing. What are we going to do to help achieve that price by presenting the property correctly? And that has to do with digital staging or staging. That has to do with the right photography. So there's all these things that work into maximizing the value of that property and getting the home seller the most possible out of that sale.
Yeah. Do you know what? I love it. But equally though, when we're saying truth, when we're talking about market, when we're talking about price, what exactly are you talking about with your sellers?
We're talking about the actual price to sell that home, not an inflated price, not a fake price, because in the marketplace in the US, now I know you're not in the US, but in the US, we have this, we'll say, problem where it's infecting the markets that agents are pricing lower to get higher. Now, in theory, that's good. I mean, to maximize the seller's profit in any way, shape, or form. But these agents, the majority of the agents, by default or by strategy, but the wrong strategy, I believe, are pricing properties way under market value, the true market value. And any agent in any market in the US can look at a property, regardless if it's, unless it's some property in real rural areas, that doesn't have a product fit, we'll say, can absolutely, by looking at comparables, can determine what the selling price will be. But agents, by default, are pricing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% under market value. So when a house goes on the market, and let's just give an average price of $200,000 US, we'll say. What agents are doing, they're pricing that property at $150,000. The problem is it creates this fake demand. There's a lot of buyers at $150,000 that think they can actually buy it at $150,000. They can't. That property is going to sell for $200,000. The problem is you get all this fake demand. You have only a small select of buyers that can actually afford the home, right? But the seller believes, wow, look at all this activity. Look at all this demand. I'm getting offers quickly, right? Within 7 days. They think it's amazing. But if that agent, through all my research, just priced that property at $200,000 from the onset, they would probably end up getting more for the seller. And I know this to be a fact. I do a lot of research in my marketplace. I study, I read a lot, and I know that sellers are leaving money on the table by employing this strategy by default or by the advice of their agent. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. We suffer in this country not from that swing. We suffer from the other swing, which may be the same in the US as well. I'm assuming it is, where it's seriously overflated. So if you use that example of that £200,000 property, they're marketing for say 225, 230. Buyers are not stupid. Buyers are generally, they have done their due diligence. They're being told by the agents what the real money is from other property viewings they're doing for properties that are similar, and they're being told what the real money is. The problem that we have is that the seller is then anchored to the 230 grand, and they're basing every financial decision consideration on the 230 grand. And then when buyers know what the real money is, which is 200, and the sellers ain't coming down because the agent, well, you told me what it was worth. Suddenly the house has been, or the flat's been on the market for say 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks. Now to the buyers, they've already gone off and bought something else. The initial wave of buyers, the new level of buyers coming in are asking, why has that property been on the market for so long? There must be something wrong with it. Now they're actually, if there's something wrong with it, maybe I only can offer 190, maybe 185. Yeah. And then they're going down the actual opposite way. So I totally agree with you. If the agent had marketed the property at 200,000, they would stand a good chance of getting 205, 210, because it's done at the right level. And the anchoring effect, and I agree with you, is where you're going far too low, you're now anchoring the buyers to the real low money. And that's why they're going to struggle to come up beyond that 200. And then I think it's a problem. Does it leave a bad taste in buyers' mouths when in your scenario?
Absolutely. Now, let me just say something about what you said, which is so important. It could swing the other way. There's still overpriced properties because of the lack of knowledge or the truth telling by the agent to the home seller. So they might go into a property and not present it correctly based on the condition, the location of the property, and tell the home seller, we'll say they're a yes man, right? Yeah, you can list it for 240, 250 when it's really going to sell for $200,000, right? So that it goes the other way. And that's the improper due diligence from that real estate agent. Now, I get really passionate about this topic here. So I'm kind of putting my passion in. So I'm not going to be the fun Bob right now. I'm going to be really truthful to say that it does go in that direction, like you said, and it's wrong. Overpricing a property to secure the listing is wrong. Okay, that's one of the code of ethics in the US, that you can't mislead a home seller to the price of their property to, let's say, gather the listing, for your own benefit. And a lot of agents do this, strategically, or just because they don't know any better, which is wrong in itself, right? But back to your question about what I said, it does leave a bad taste in the buyer's mouth because, you're constantly, as agents, we're telling people, hey, listen, this property is on for 150, but it's a fake price. And this has started happening. I mean, I start telling consumers this. They're like, what do you mean, Bob? I'm like, you can't buy it for 150. We can go see it, but there's no possible way you're going to get it for 150, which is usually the truth, right? And it totally makes a home seller feel that they're being taken advantage of. Bait and switch, right? It makes them feel like, do I want to continue looking for a house? Is this going to be a problem? What should I do, Bob? So I have to tell home sellers, if you're approved up to 200,000, we shouldn't be looking at homes at 200,000. We need to look at homes at 170 or 180 to build in that gap already. And they like, well, I don't like the homes at 170, 180. I said, I get it, because that $200,000 home is really a 250 home. And that's beyond your budget, unfortunately. So you can kind of see what's happening here.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to happen until the market changes. When the market changes and things level out a little, it becomes more stabilized, because we're still in a seller's market in most areas of the US. But as the market changes and stabilizes, more inventory comes on, rates haven't affected many things in the market, strangely enough. because there's really no logic in the market and there's pent up demand and people just want what they want nowadays. But things will eventually change where agents will have to get back to this price. And it's going to happen fast when it does happen, and agents aren't going to know how to react, right? Their strategy of selling a home in a week or a few days by pricing low to get high, multiple offers, auction type bidding is going to eventually go away. I don't know when, but it will eventually go away. And agents will have to employ the truth, right? They'll have to be more transparent, and they'll have to use more better marketing and what I call tech, right? They're going to have to do that. And the days on market's going to get longer until they know how to price appropriately with the home seller and set that right price from the beginning. That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, totally. And so leads nicely onto the transparency bit in terms of process. How do you promote good practice? What are you showing sellers in terms of, or what's the best case scenario for a seller to actually see in terms of information, in terms of comparable evidence? Is there anything that you show or take them through in order for them to actually?
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking me that question, because this is really important. And I'm, before this call, after the call, I'm completing one of these, and it's a spreadsheet. It's a simple spreadsheet that I created. I have the template, and it basically has different columns in that spreadsheet. And one of them, like I said, I do this thing, smart sale, smart profit, I have 3 different systems, we'll say. And one of them is to sell the house quickly, right? I'm not saying we underprice the house like I just talked to you about, but I talked to them about maybe going 5%, not 20%, maybe 5% a little under, right? And if you do this, the probability of you selling, it's still within market range. The probability of you selling will be, 0 to X days. I have a probability chart. That's what I call it. Okay. And I also, beyond that, I have another segment off of this chart, we'll say, which is a cash offer. I do cash offers. I actually tell, home sellers that if you want a cash offer through my networks, through myself, through my company, that I will offer you a cash offer. Many people don't want to go in that direction in this market unless there's a major disruption in their life. Okay, let's just get that straight. So they choose the first column, they're selling quickly, the probability, but it's still market value. The second column over has another range based on the price, and that's more market range. And then the last column is the overpricing. If you price it here, it might not sell. We might have to do an adjustment to get back to this other range. So that's the transparency of telling people up front with the data, with the comps, with the market statistics. But I don't go crazy on this because most consumers can't absorb market data. They really can't. You have to show the comps, what's sold in their neighborhood, similar things, pretty common sense stuff, right? But you can't go too deep into this data, right? And then you through your expertise, you show them, where do you want to be in this? And this is what's going to happen. And 99% of the time, I'm not going to say I'm always right, but I'm right, okay? This is usually what's going to happen. So I'm guiding them down this path. No other agent uses this type of chart. They just don't. I just know that because I created it. And it shows them what they're left with. It's like a net sheet as well. Mm-hmm. So it has the columns in there where it minuses out the commissions, the marketing fees or whatever. It has all that in there. It has their mortgage payoff if they have a mortgage payoff. It has attorney fees and all that. So they're left with, they want to see what they're left with at the end of the day. And so that's really a good representation. What I always leave with someone, I always lead that with the appointment, after building rapport, after talking about their house and looking it over and all that. We always go there with it already filled out, because 9 times out of 10, I already know what their house is going to sell for based on our conversation, based on my market data, my research of their home and all that. Then we make some final adjustments. We set on that, and the seller signs that. That becomes part of the listing agreement, because again, there's transparency about the process, about, hey, I understand this, Bob. I get it. And I know that if I go here on the scale, even though you told me not to, I might have trouble selling, right? And I want them to be held accountable knowing that I talked about that. Most agents don't do this. I will honestly tell you, they don't. And this is not a hard pressure sales tactic. This is just being real with the home seller and explaining the process and explaining what will happen based on price. And price is everything. Price is a form of marketing. That's what agents forget. The wrong price, you're going down the wrong path. You can do all the marketing in the world, I always tell people, from color brochures to professional photography, but if the price isn't right, you're done. It's going to take long to sell, or you're going to sell it too quickly and give up money. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, completely. Now, I love the fact that you're actually showing firsthand, day one, week one, at the appraisal, speaking with the sellers, look, these are the costs. So they can see it for themselves. I do it slightly differently in the sense that I now wish I've gone to that level, but I haven't, right? And I like that. I generally would get somebody to agree with me in a sense that, and I learned this from a guy called Tom Panos, an Australian agent, about 17 years ago, and it's always stuck, when he said, property is not in isolation, it's in competition. And so I'd say to a seller, look, would you agree with me that property is not in isolation? Because if it was, you could just name any price because you're the only person with a house. And they'd say, yeah, I agree with that. So, right, so you're in competition, right, with all the other properties around. And they're like, well, yeah. So it's like, well, what are you going to do to get all the very best buyers away from what they're currently looking at to come and see yours instead? And they would look at me as if to say, wow, no agent has ever actually said that to me. And it's like, it gets them away from the stars in your eyes thinking, because I'm not asking for their business. I'm just saying, you need to think about this. Let's be critical about this. What is going to happen? But I think you've just completely trumped and superseded me with an actual a data sheet that has got that, which I think is excellent, because at least then, when you've left, they're probably, as a couple, if it's a couple selling, probably sitting there and scrutinizing the numbers and going, actually, yeah. And even if you think about it, and they've been on the market for, say, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, how many mortgage payments is that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a cost to selling, and people don't realize that. If you're going to be really tough with your price and you have a mortgage, and even if it's $1,000 cost every month, $2,000 times 3 months, it adds up. What you could have sold for before that happened. And see, a lot of people don't understand the cost of, I call it the cost of running your home. That's what I call it. And that's really important to show people or talk to people about the cost of running their home. As they get closer to the winter months, you're going to have more heating bills, right? And say it's a big, huge home and it costs $400 US to heat the house every month. That adds up, right? There's all these things that add up, and you as an agent have to talk about these things, not again to hard sell someone, to be truthful with them, because they don't always understand or realize this. And not in agents are leading with too much salesy, and not really having those, like you said, those really one-on-one deep conversations as a friend, number one, so that's really
completely. And so somebody could say, well, hang on, Bob, they're going to have their mortgage repayments on the next house anyway. But in a seller's mind, when they go to sell, that's it. Their house, generally speaking, in my experience, you may have a different experience, but in my experience, the house isn't a home anymore. It's a house. And I think there's a difference between an emotional difference between the two words. Home is where they're living. The house is what they're trying to sell, because now they're on to the next chapter in their life, which is the onward purchase. So suddenly it's like, and we're still paying for this house. So what's going on? And then they'll question themselves. The couples will start arguing between themselves. You said to go with this agent, and it's unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. In terms of tech and marketing, was the 3 prices you just mentioned there in terms of systems, is that what you
Well, let me tell you this. First of all, I don't care if the house is 80,000 or 800,000. I do the same marketing for people. You know what I mean? And people find that to be odd, but that's just the way it is. In my market back in the day, I was I've been in real estate 17 years. And I can tell you this, that I was one of the first people to even use professional photography in my marketplace, digital staging. I mean, that's a fact. And a lot of agents, even today, just a house that's in my market that's a luxury home, $400,000-$500,000 will snap it with their iPhone. Now iPhones are okay, but come on, seriously,
No, you
make it
can't do
look a
that.
little better.
Yeah.
And people and agents don't understand that marketing is going to pay dividends because someone else is going to see the listing that might be thinking about selling the house, or you might put it in your portfolio, right? Your marketing portfolio to show other sellers of what you do with marketing. It's a brand. It's an image. I don't like promoting a bad product, and because that's a representation of me, who I am, right? I mean, it's just
What
it's
what
sad. It's really sad. Really
Yeah,
sad.
and I would say that professional photography is 50% of the battle. And
Yeah.
with pro photography, I'll ask you actually, a couple of questions. Number one, who is the professional photography for? Is it for, I mean, we know the benefit for the agent in terms of brand, but is the professional photography for the seller or is it for the buyer? And also, my next question is, with that professional photography, what do you think it does to the buyer?
Well, first of all, I never think of my business for me. That's always secondary. Number one. Number one, it's always secondary for me. It's always like if I'm representing a home seller, you can't sell your home without a buyer. End of story, unless you're gonna be your buyer, right? So you have to be thinking of marketing to the buyer, and you have to hit those points with the buyer. So professional photography is very important to the buyer, but it's also for me to tell the home seller, I care about your home. I want it to look the best it can possibly look. And when we put it on the market, yeah, it's to attract the right buyer that's going to be like, ooh, wow, especially if we digitally stage it, even though I disclose that the house has been digitally staged, because some buyers could get there and be like, where's the furniture? It's like, are you buying the furniture? Are you buying the house?
Yeah.
But besides all that, answer your question, it's really for the client first to show that I am doing everything possible to attract that buyer. And then the buyer secondary is the buyer that says, wow, look at these awesome photos, we need to see this house, tapping into their emotion, right? I mean, that's not a sleazy thing to do. That's a psychology of marketing, right? And that happens every single day, 24/7. And that's just something that I think the seller needs. We always called the houses that did not have good photography sleepers if they were a good house. And we put fault to the agent, because you could have a really nice 1950s brick house that was solid, but the agent took dark photos, and then we go in as agents and say, oh my God, this house is a sleeper. And it's an awesome house, and we're going to make an offer right now. In that, shame on that agent, because they probably, if they presented it correctly, they could have got even more people coming in and saying, pictures are great, house is great, let's put an offer right now.
Mm.
Right. And I think that's a huge problem. I just like to circumvent that and make it look good out of the gate for the home seller, then the buyer. That's it. I missed your
Yeah.
last question. What was one other question in there? What was
No,
it?
no, no. That was it. It was like who's it more important for, either the
Yeah.
buyer or the
Yeah.
or the actual seller? And I think it's from a seller's perspective, it's important. So, like as you say, again, I agree with you. From an agent's perspective, that is you setting the stall out early, saying this is my brand. I know it's only my brand is professional, so it must mean everything I do, every facet of my business, every area of my business must be super solid and watertight and just ooze professionalism.
Mm.
From the seller's perspective, it's like, well, okay, I've got an agent massively caring about representing me as an agent, so straight away I know they're accountable. And then from the buyer perspective, of course, that buyer, when they go back to work on a Monday morning and they show their colleagues the set of property details, and their colleagues go, wow, oh my God, makes it even easier then for that buyer to say, yeah, lovely. Bob, can I put the offer in, please? Because it's been endorsed by colleagues. Whereas versus really bad photography, dark as you say, friends don't want to say, oh, I don't know about that, Sally. But the look on their face and the silence will tell the buyer everything. And that will cost
Yes.
because now the buyer's unsure. Well, I really like the house, but that offer I was going to put in, if my friends don't like it, am I making the right decision? Am I, and all of that goes through their head, and it can be easily taken off the table with proper pro photography.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. It starts my marketing funnel when we give the home seller this really nice brochure. It shows our whole process. Let me see if I get a copy. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
So it's a nice brochure here. It's exclusive marketing plan. Now
that is gorgeous. That house, by the way.
I wasn't planning on showing this, but it has some basic stuff about me, but enough about me. It doesn't really go into detail, but it has this right here where it starts with, it talks about certain things, but what's the first page? Professional photography right there. And then digital staging, right? So, I'm not just saying this stuff, it's really, really happening. And then the presentation on the outside, the presentation on the inside, from marketing takeaways to the agent. Now, here's the thing. Back in the day when a house would sit on the market, 60 days, 70, 90 days, the seller demanded more marketing from the agents. That's why these agents always came up with this nonsense. I have a 201 marketing plan. No one has a 201 marketing plan, right? They would say all kinds of stuff. You just basically need a basic marketing plan that encompasses tech, social, online, offline, stuff like that. But as the market changes, consumers are going to demand more marketing from their agents. And a lot of these agents that were selling homes in one day that did no marketing are going to be like, what do I do? What's going on? All these new generation of agents. So anyways, the marketing plan talks about the marketing plan. It goes into all the stuff, but then it breaks down the systems, which is, smart offer, smart profit, smart sale, where it really breaks down the different systems they can choose from. And obviously there's testimonials, and on the back it has, the mistakes. It's selling your house, different mistakes you could make, real simple stuff. But this is a takeaway. And not many agents do this. Most of the time it's company generated. It's talking about the company, the brokerage and all that stuff, how great we are. No. This is just something that goes to them, and most agents don't have this in their back pocket.
Yeah.
To leave with the consumer with also that price chart and also the great dialogue. Now, one thing that's different about me is I'm now a remote agent. I'm a hybrid agent. For 7 years, I've been like that. I practice real estate in New York, and that's where the business is, but I live in South Carolina, sunny South Carolina. And so I have I call him a leveraged listing agent on the ground. But when he goes to listing appointment, he gives this. I initially have the consult with the client. They know they're meeting someone on the ground, and that agent edifies me. He is me, like we'll say, and they're getting two agents for the price of one, I say, right? Because they're getting that agent on the ground who's me, that's talking them through the process, checklists, things like that, what to do to prepare for market. Then they're getting me on the other end, handling everything else, all the marketing, all the negotiations when we get an offer, the closing and all that. And the system works beautifully. And it's pretty much better than what most agents have, because agents are doing all the jobs, right? Running around, doing this, doing that, or have assistants. But I'm more vested in the deal with the clients. And so it gives me the ability to focus more attention to my clients while regaining my time freedom. That's really the whole system. That's why I did this. Okay.
Yeah. And but you've just proved the point that actually, if you keep this industry super simple in terms of your systems and your processes, you're able to impart that on colleagues, people that you've employed that are going to do exactly, and the same results are happening again. And I always think to myself, if an agent in this country has like a 94 or 95% valuation accuracy rate over the last 12 months, what have they been doing over the last 12 months? Why has that valuation accuracy rate not gone from 95% to 100%? Because surely they should know their market better than anybody else, and they can't keep making the same mistakes. So that is a system that's going wrong, versus your system, which is actually this is simplicity in its best form, which gets maximum results. But Bob, are we saying, right, when we say what's the best thing, what's the number one or the thing that truly maximizes the value of someone's home? Are we saying what you're talking about is truth, transparency, and tech? Or are we actually saying you've got massive levels of accountability?
Absolutely. There's massive levels of accountability. I mean, I have a communication, guarantee with the client where they know that I have done this all up front. If I have a system in place, it's helping them, right? There's no guesswork. So I'm held accountable. And I tell people that if I drop the ball, I need to know, fire me, right? I have what's known as an easy exit listing agreement that we employ, which means basically that if they're not doing their job, what I expect, right? We can end the relationship. If I'm not doing my job, they can end the relationship with no fee, right? I screwed up. Obviously, there's an accountability, mechanism built into every client that I work with. They might not understand it fully, but it's there, right? It's in paperwork form, contracts, agreements, whatever. And it's something that I live by. I mean, that's just, if you're really principle based in your life, it's going to bleed over to your business, right? And that's what I really believe. And that's what I'm passionate about. Consumers don't always understand that because remember, consumers don't always get the chance to work with multiple agents.
Mm-hmm.
So who they work with is who they think is great because they don't know any better sometimes until a listing expires from the market or a seller is interviewing a lot of agents, then they can see the differences. But still, they don't really sometimes see the differences until they're in the deal with that agent. Yeah. Right. Everything always looks great up front, over promising and under delivering. I always tell people like, I'm going to under deliver and over promise all the way through. Right. I'm not just going to give you some spiel to get your listing and then I'm gone. You don't hear from me or I bail or I'm not truthful with you and telling you that we need to adjust the price or we need to do this or we need to clean the house better or we need to cut the grass. We need to do this, whatever it may be. Right. And so I think that's the accountability works both ways, but absolutely, I want to be held accountable through my systems.
Absolutely right. We've literally got about 1 minute and 30 seconds left. But what if I told you that the agents in this country lock in sellers to a lengthy contract, and when they're not performing and not delivering anything that they've said, and when the seller says, I want to get out of this contract, the agent says, I'm so sorry, we've still got 4 weeks left to run. And by the way, you've got a 28-day notice period after that period in order to get out of the contract with me. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't like it. In the US, it's also true that when you sign that listing agreement and you locked in a 4-month, 6-month plus contract, and if you try to bail without a reason and you don't go to the managing broker and say, I hate my agent, I don't like my agent, they're horrible, get me out of this contract. Sometimes they make you stay in the contract. And if you break the contract, they try to charge you a marketing fee for all the so-called marketing that was done on the home.
So providing no service.
No service. And that's why I override that with this, let's say, this easy exit agreement to let people know you're not held hostage in my contract. If I screw up, you're out.
Love it.
I'm going to say I screwed up.
Love it. Bob, we've got literally 20 seconds. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. And honestly, I could speak to you forever. This last 40 minutes has gone really quick. Thank you for coming on the show. You've been incredible.
Thank you. You've been too. We're very similar, believe it or not, in our mindset.